This is DIY CyberGuy with David W. Schrofer. Every week, he will show you how cybersecurity can be as easy as locking up your house at night. Now, here is your host, David W. Schrofer.
Welcome back, everybody, to DIY CyberGuy. This is episode 99. AI, entry-level job killer or Mirage? This is a hair on fire 3 out of 5, meaning that really something you should understand, especially if you're really curious about AI and its impact, specifically its impact to jobs and the job market. So the World Economic Forum recently warned that artificial intelligence could disrupt millions of white-collar jobs while simultaneously redefining what employers value most in human workers. And we've talked about some of these themes on the podcast already. That's consistent with a general concern about AI that many of us have, which is it's a job stealer, especially for entry-level white-collar jobs. Or is it? So in a recent article in The Atlantic entitled "Young People Are Falling Behind, but Not Because of AI," this article examined the impact of AI on the job market, and it observed that the data does not point to AI killing the jobs of young people, but young people are losing their jobs in general. In fact, the article argues that AI might actually be increasing employment for college-educated young workers. So I'm going to read you a quote from the article. "The case that AI is already stealing young people's jobs is based on a statistical mirage. Historically, recent college graduates have had much lower unemployment rates than the average worker. Since ChatGPT was released, however, the unemployment rate for this group has risen nearly twice as fast as the overall number. Because AI is best suited to replacing white-collar workers, this trend is what you'd expect to see if AI was having a labor market impact. But the unemployment rate can be a highly misleading statistic. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics counts individuals as, quote, unemployed only if they've actively looked for work in the past 4 weeks. Otherwise, they're removed from the data set. The rationale is avoiding counting people who don't actually want a job, such as students, retirees, and stay-at-home parents. But it also excludes people who want to work but have stopped looking for a job." The economists Adam Osmek and Nathan Goldschlag recently took a deeper dive into the data and found that a significant number of young workers without college degrees had simply given up looking for a job, artificially improving the unemployment rate for young workers without a degree, and thereby giving the appearance that recent college graduates were doing uniquely poorly. This is the labor market equivalent of a school's worst performing students simply not showing up for a standardized test day. Using a different employment measure that includes all working age adults 25 and younger except full-time students, the two scientists found out that those without degrees have experienced an even worse decline than their college-educated peers since 2023. And it's quoting the scientists as saying, "Turns out the labor market for young people, all young people, is even worse than we thought. That makes me doubt this AI is a story." In fact, AI might be increasing employment for college-educated workers. One 2025 analysis found that since the release of ChatGPT, recent graduates in sectors with more AI usage have experienced slightly better employment outcomes than they did on years prior to the release of ChatGPT. In an August survey of last year of businesses from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, a large share of firms reported hiring more workers due to AI as opposed to fewer workers. So what is true? Here with me to talk about all of this today is Andy Sitison. Andy is the CTO of Share More Stories. He is a veteran technology strategist and AI expert with 30 years of experience in cloud transformation, data analytics, and custom large language model deployment, and focused on human-centric AI and digital engagement. Welcome, Andy.
Well, thanks for having me out.
Thanks for being here. So here's the first question. Is AI killing entry-level jobs today, or do you agree with the article that it's a mirage?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? And you know what's interesting, before I answer that, I'm gonna leave you hanging a second and say, what was really interesting was the nuance and the complexity of what it took to explain the situation, right?
Yeah.
And it left you with not a black and white answer, but a little bit of gray and a little bit of black and white. And so I
Okay.
think that is a fair statement. I do think it is absolutely impacting jobs. It's impacting jobs from a transformation standpoint, and as an inflection point. It is one of the most unique technologies we've deployed, and I've been watching technologies for almost 40 years now,
Hmm.
and helping get those out into companies and businesses. At the same time, it's more about what the job is than is it a full black and white total loss of jobs. And
Okay.
it's not just AI that's impacting here. And we love to use the word AI, two little letters that represents everything we're talking about right now. But let's be honest, most of what we talk about AI is at least a major minority or a majority capitalism. It's more about how it's being applied, where's the profit motive for that, and how that's impacting how consumers consume it, right? And so those are more capitalistic decisions, consumer decisions, and each of those are also kind of weighing in on, where the jobs are and how many people are actually looking. To your point, I'll finish with saying that there's people in that list that are going, hey, you know what? I'm just not in the job market anymore. So there's a change in the way we are choosing to live all at the same time.
Well, thinking about it in this way, I mean, we'll never know what this generation, the people in 2026 who are recent graduates of, college graduates or even high school graduates, would they be experiencing the same level of unemployment if AI didn't exist? Obviously, we'll never know the answer to that, but do you think AI is making an impact already today? Because it's, as the article pointed out, ChatGPT has only been around a couple of years, really, at this point. It's hasn't really, and it's all of the impact it's had basically in the last 24, maybe 30 months.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that two ways. One is to say I do believe AI has impacted jobs, and it's a continuation of something that's been going on for at least a decade, which is called automation or algorithmic automation.
Hmm.
And we
Machine
started rolling
learning
that.
and things in that bucket, right?
Yeah, it's how do we automate jobs? How do we get rid of jobs? Essentially, was the
Yeah.
goal of those initial ideas. And AI is a tool set that has taken us to a new level there. Again, that's technology adoption that's been going on for a decade or more, and those intentions are to reduce jobs. And there's another major movement that's going on in corporations for at least since the 2010s, and that is centralization. Like when you don't innovate, one way to keep growing your business is to merge and then to get rid of shared services, right? So you have companies that will slowly get bigger and also centralize operations. So you'll see smaller regional, like when I started my career in the 90s, there was a tech company in every little town, moderate city all over the country, and you could get a decent tech job anywhere you wanted to go. Now they're building 40,000 acre data centers in Oregon, right? So everything's getting
Right.
consolidated. So sometimes, depending on the geography, jobs aren't there. It's not AI, but AI is absolutely a part of that, right? Because part of what's getting deployed is that next wave of technology. And AI is uniquely sentient, and that's a heavy statement. I overstate there. It
Okay.
feels sentient. It simulates sentience, right? It
Okay.
does help us automate in a real interesting way. And I'm gonna leave you with one last hook here, and that is it's actually smarter than us in certain ways, right? Like we do story analysis. So imagine I give you 500 stories and ask you to read them and tell me the themes. You're not going to remember much, right? It's going to take you a week and you're not going to remember much.
Right.
The AI can do it in 5 minutes and give me all that data without losing it. So
Right.
it's smarter than us in certain ways that we are going to be challenged, and we're going to have to
Well,
think about
would,
humans.
would you would you call that, and sorry to interrupt, but would you
No,
call
no, you
that
should have.
would you call that smarter per se, or just a better analyst? Right?
Yeah,
Because back to your question, you could say read all these stories, get back to me. It would take me a week to do it, and depending on how good or bad my notes are, maybe I can recap it and tell you the themes. But I could also tell you how they made me feel. And did it bring up childhood memories, or did it make me happy or sad, or was there an emotional component to the themes? And that's where we, hopefully for a very, very long time, will be differentiated from AI. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, it's interesting because, our company, what we do, we study stories and we do it on attitudes and emotions. So we study anxiety, joy. We look for evidence of those things in those stories. So we're actually emulating that example. But with that said, I agree with you. It's a technology. It's our mind's a technology for that matter, if you want to look at it that way. But it is a technology that is not intelligent and smarter. It's emulating intelligence. What it does is has a great cache. It has a really good ability to process algorithms, and it can retain an evaluation of something and then provide that back. And so what we use it for is complex pattern decision making and looking for things in the data. We don't trust it to make final decisions because it's good at certain things and it's not good at certain things. And
Right.
we all know about hallucinations, as they like to call it. You're talking to an AI agent and it's going well, and the fourth question, you're like, why did you bring up football had wait, are you even on the data we're talking about, right? Like you find that place where it just
Right.
lost you, right? And so there's a lot of reason for humans to be in that process. And I think it's, as always, it's about where does the human fit best and where does the technology fit best. And so that's that moment. It's such a big change and transformation that we're all scratching our head and feeling a little nervous that, that we're going to look like a science fiction movie here in a little bit. But I think humans still have a big place in that.
Okay. It's graduation season for colleges around the country. If you were on a podium right now with a microphone talking to a stadium full of, soon to be college graduates, like soon to be by the end of the day, they're going to be college graduates. What would you tell them on the topic of AI?
Yeah. Well, I would tell them to connect locally first. I would say your job doesn't matter. You don't give your job don't give the best of you for 30 years to your job, because I would, on the opposite side, say go and make local connections wherever you land. Meet people, be part of something, be on a kayaking group, or help people learn to read, or work at a food bank, whatever it is. Connect locally with people, because those connections and that kind of that soul of you, that vibe of you, will also pay back in your job, because I think we all need context. The world is so digital, and it can come to us at any time of the day, right? In all times of the day, we never get away from it. So we get in these modes of like, it feels like we're a ghost of sorts. We don't feel like we're truly connected. And I think that connection is really important. So if you're coming forward with AI, make sure you know how it works, at least from a user standpoint, that you can know how it will impact the jobs you will have for the first year, for the next 5 years. And, we're learning. This is like the PC of the late 80s, when it was changing every 2 months. It was obsoleting all our laptops. We're in that kind of crazy change mode that we're in right now. So know the technology, know how it applies to your business, be that new voice in that company, because most companies don't know how to take this on. Guys like me have been around forever, don't know new technology usually. I happen to, but not everybody.
Right.
And so having those new entrants coming in, they not only bring in an understanding of that generation of people and how the world works with younger people, but it also helps them understand how to apply these technologies in a way that they're not going to figure out on their own. So you are still extremely valuable in all those ways. Humans still matter.
Any quick tips? Like you mentioned, the idea that you would tell the college graduates, hey, understand AI. So if one of them were to say, well, what's the best way to do that? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I bet most of them already do, but I would say use it.
Probably,
And
yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's a question they wouldn't have probably. But using AI is and that's part of what's challenging right now. My wife's a middle school math teacher. My son's a PhD candidate for physics and teaches classes. And the
Wow.
use of AI is probably is gone too far. And we're also finding just ability to pass classes that maybe a decade ago everybody could pass. So are we changing the way we train and we educate ourselves? Is there things we don't need to know anymore? When calculators came out, we didn't need to know arithmetic as much, and now cursive is
Right.
questionable. Do we need it? So are we changing what a human needs to know to participate, be a productive member of society? And is that what the tests are telling us? Or are we not learning enough? Are we somehow failing this next generation? And that is a big question in the school systems right now. And I believe it's probably a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of the shifting gears, and we hear the clunking of something's changing. I don't think
Yeah.
we're going to work as hard as we used to. People of the Victorian age wanted to get to 40-hour, 50-hour work weeks. Now people might work less than 40, maybe work 40 to 50. But going forward, I'm starting to see, maybe it's a 4-day work week. Maybe that next generation doesn't need to work the hours to still be the human and a valuable human in today's industry, if you will.
Interesting. You may be uniquely positioned, given your background and your business, and share more stories, and even the fact that your wife works in a middle school. If you were talking to school administrators, superintendents, and college people who run, the president of a university, for example, or something like that, and you were to advise the educators on how to teach AI or how to factor AI in to their curriculum, what would you advise them there?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I've talked to a bunch of groups, and I'll give you two. One is teachers, and one would be biologists. Let's say like marine biologists. And
Okay.
I've given them both one-on-one classes, like a little appreciation. Like I turned a generative AI model into a pirate, and it only could do pirate conversations, right? And the teachers got it immediately. They laughed and they were with me the whole time. I talked to the marine biologists and they were all lost. And I was like, I need an extra hour to catch them to where I started. And I tell you that because they're very smart people. They
Interesting.
just haven't had it introed in their lives yet. Teachers have had to deal with it for a few years now. And it also is very helpful. At the end of the day after teaching, it's nice to have something to help you write a letter to the parent that's a little mad.
Right.
It's very difficult to emotionally be that person all day long. And so it's about awareness and aptitude and experience level. And so I think when you look at bringing it into the environment, I think it's a lot about walling off. And a lot of schools are starting to look at removing phones from access. And I would tell you, I think phones are way more damaging than AI is to our kids' education and how they're becoming adults.
Yes.
There's other things that are impacting these people that it's not just AI. But I think it's about walling off space and saying, you're learning right now. In this case, you get popsicle sticks and some masking tape, and that's all you got, right? In this case, you can use your phone. In this case, you can use AI. But I think we need to teach, and just like the old days, it's just we have a new thing called AI. It's got to be turned off and on. It can't just be the cheat. And we deal with fraud in our world, and it's easy to fake things when you're stories, for example. If you have a little incentive there, people will show up for almost anything and try to feed you 20 stories that aren't real. And so we have to build skill sets around what is fraud, how do we detect it. And it isn't just going, hey, AI, tell me if that's a fake story or not, because I can look at two stories and that's not what's going to tell me what's fake. It's going to be the provenance that goes before that. It's the IP addresses, the VoIP they use, we have to look at all sorts of components.
Right.
So I'm giving you too much, right? But if you're a teacher, you have to start to think about the fencing. It's almost like you're a sheep herder, right? Like you have to think about the way you set up your farm.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah, and think about how you're shepherding, because you're not gonna make it go away, but you can control moments. And I think that's it. And I got to say, the big thing for me in teaching right now, we need to teach passion for learning and stop all the testing crazy that we have, because there's so much forced on the testing. So many kids are already burnt out. By the time they get to middle school, they're not being taught to love it or love learning. Right. They're being taught to pass something.
Right.
All those things are should be on the chopping block or on the chalkboard for analysis.
Gotcha. Andy, great conversation. Thanks so much for being on the podcast. Where can people find out more about what you do?
Yeah, so like I said, we collect stories of populations and study those stories and try to help brands and organizations better understand the humans that we all are. And that company is called Share More Stories. It's pretty easy to find us on LinkedIn or out on our website. And if you type sharemorestories.com, you're going to find us. My last name is Sitison, and you're not going to find anybody but my family with that last name. So if you're looking for me, type Sitison in a Google, and you're gonna trip over me pretty quickly. So there's in all your formats of media, I'm in one or more of those. So feel free to pick the one you want to track me down in.
Excellent.
And it's been a blast. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to share with everybody what's going through my mind.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, really interesting insights and great perspective. I don't think we've had anybody like you on the podcast before with your experience, seriously, and it's really helpful to get a full 360 view. So thanks again for being here, and we'll have you back someday.
Yeah, it'd be great.
That's all the time we have today. Remember, for the show notes from this episode, or to listen to any of our past episodes, or to get a free chapter from my book, Digital Habits, just go to DIYCyberGuy.com. And if you want to buy my book, just go to Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com and search the keywords Digital Habits 5 Simple Tips. If you have questions or an idea for the show, just email me at questions@DIYCyberGuy.com. And if this show helps you stay safe online, please click the share button and send it to everyone you think we can help. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to DIY Cyber Guy. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this broadcast are for general information only, and we have not knowingly divulged any information that would conflict with any of our non-disclosure or confidentiality agreements. Enjoy the internet safely.